Racism in America isn't just a relic of the past. It's a harsh reality that still exists in certain places today. From towns with deep-seated histories of segregation to cities facing ongoing racial tensions, some places have gained a reputation for being among the most racist in the country. But which places stand out the most? In this video, we're counting down the 10 most racist places in the USA, using history, statistics, and real-life experiences to paint a clear picture of discrimination in modern America. Whether it's racially motivated policies, hate crimes, or systemic bias, these locations have left a lasting impact. Let's take a hard look at the facts, because understanding the problem is the first step toward change. For decades, Vidor was one of the most infamous sundown towns in America, places where Black Americans were warned not to stay after dark. In fact, well into the 20th century, signs at the city limits made it clear, "Leave before the sun sets." The town gained national attention in the 1990s when a federal court ordered public housing in Vidor to be integrated. 4 Black residents moved in, only to face relentless threats, intimidation, and vandalism. Within months, all had left. Vidor's ties to white supremacy run deep. It was once a stronghold for the Ku Klux Klan, and even today, Klan activity has been reported in the area. While some residents claim the town has moved on from its racist past, many outsiders still associate Vidor with its long history of exclusion and hostility toward minorities. Is change possible, or does its reputation still hold true? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Forsyth County, Georgia, has a past that many would rather forget, but history doesn't disappear so easily. In 1912, an act of racial terror forced nearly all Black residents out of the county. White mobs used violence, threats, and arson to drive them away, and for decades, Forsyth remained almost entirely white. Fast forward to 1987, when civil rights activists, led by Hosea Williams, organized a march to challenge the county's history of racial exclusion. They were met with an angry white mob, hurling rocks and racial slurs. The event made national headlines, exposing Forsyth's deep-seated racism to the world. Today, Forsyth County is still nearly 80% white, and while some say progress has been made, racial tensions haven't fully disappeared. Reports of discrimination, racial profiling, and resistance to diversity efforts still surface. For many, Forsyth remains a symbol of America's struggle with race, a reminder that the past isn't as far behind as some might think. Harrison, Arkansas, is a town of about 13,000 people, but it has a reputation that far exceeds its size. For decades, it has been associated with white supremacy, largely because it's home to one of the national headquarters of the Ku Klux Klan. While not all residents share these views, the presence of racist organizations has cast a long shadow over the town. In recent years, Harrison has made headlines for controversial billboards promoting white pride and racist ideology, reinforcing the perception that it's an unwelcoming place for minorities. Many businesses and city officials have tried to distance the town from this image, arguing that the majority of residents do not support hate groups. There are also local activists working to change the town's reputation, organizing protests and community discussions to promote diversity and inclusion. But despite their efforts, the stigma remains. For many, Harrison is a stark reminder that racism isn't just history, it's still very real in parts of America today. The question is, can it ever truly change? Boston may be known for its rich history, top universities, and progressive politics, but for many Black Americans, it tells a different story. Studies have consistently ranked Boston among the most unwelcoming cities for Black residents, with deep racial divides that persist to this day. For decades, redlining policies kept Black families from buying homes in wealthier neighborhoods, severely limiting economic mobility. The city also has a long history of racial tension in education, most notably in the 1970s, when violent protests erupted over court-ordered school desegregation, leading to national headlines. Even Boston's celebrated sports culture has been marred by racism. Black athletes across multiple sports have reported hearing racial slurs from the stands, with Fenway Park gaining particular infamy for such incidents. While Boston has made efforts to improve, surveys still show that many Black residents feel unwelcome and face discrimination in housing, employment, and everyday interactions. The city's image may be progressive, but for many, the reality tells a much different story. Montgomery, Alabama, once the heart of the Confederacy, holds the weight of America's painful past. This city was a central battleground during the Civil Rights Movement, where powerful figures like Rosa Parks and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. fought for racial justice. Montgomery was the site of the famous bus boycott in 1955, a pivotal moment that sparked national change. The scars of segregation run deep here, and they're not just a thing of the past. While America has made progress, Montgomery still struggles with racial inequality. Income disparities between Black and white residents remain stark, with African American families earning far less on average. The city's police force has also faced criticism for disproportionately targeting Black residents. This ongoing racial tension is a painful reminder of the unfinished work of the Civil Rights Movement. Despite its rich legacy of resistance, Montgomery's struggles with race highlight how deeply racial inequality is embedded in American society. Charlottesville became a national symbol of white supremacy after the 2017 Unite the Right rally, where a white nationalist killed a protester. The violent event shook the nation and brought to light the city's long-standing racial tensions. What began as a protest against the removal of a Confederate statue quickly spiraled into chaos, exposing the deep divide over issues of race and history in America. Charlottesville's history of segregation, as well as its reputation as a stronghold for white nationalist groups, made it ground zero for a battle over hate and intolerance. Despite efforts to move forward, these deep-rooted issues have not been resolved. The pain and scars from that tragic day are still felt by many as protests and clashes continue to erupt over the years. Charlottesville stands as a stark reminder that racism isn't just a relic of the past. It is an ongoing battle. The events here challenge us to confront America's history and work toward true healing. Jackson, Mississippi, stands as one of the most racially segregated cities in the United States, home to a high percentage of Black residents. However, systemic racism runs deep here, from policing to education to infrastructure. The city's predominantly Black population often faces unequal treatment, and this inequality is apparent in multiple aspects of daily life. News reports highlight Jackson's issues with policing, where accusations of excessive force and racial profiling are common. Education, too, is marked by disparities, with schools in predominantly Black areas often underfunded, limiting opportunities for students. The city also struggles with aging infrastructure, which predominantly affects Black communities. Poor roads, outdated utilities, and inadequate healthcare facilities contribute to the hardships many residents face. Despite these challenges, Jackson has seen protests demanding justice and reform as locals push for change. Activists and residents continue their fight for equality, making Jackson a focal point in the struggle against systemic racism. The city's story is one of resilience, but also a stark reminder of the deep-rooted issues that still need to be addressed. The killing of Michael Brown in Ferguson sparked the Black Lives Matter movement, shedding light on St. Louis's long history of racial tensions and police brutality. In 2014, the death of Brown, an unarmed Black teenager, at the hands of a white police officer, ignited protests that captured national attention. The events in Ferguson exposed the deep, systemic racial inequalities that have existed in the area for decades. Black residents in St. Louis have faced widespread economic disparity, limited access to quality education, and discriminatory practices in housing and employment. At the heart of it all is a history of aggressive and often violent policing of Black communities, contributing to a growing mistrust between law enforcement and the people they are meant to protect. Ferguson's protests were a powerful call for justice, but the fight for racial equality and an end to police brutality continues. While progress has been made, the scars of this troubled past still haunt the city today. Chicago, Illinois, stands as one of the most segregated cities in the United States, with deep racial divides that have persisted for decades. The history of redlining, the practice of denying loans to black residents in certain neighborhoods, has created long-lasting economic barriers. Entire communities were restricted from homeownership and access to capital, pushing them into concentrated, often neglected areas. These neighborhoods remain some of the poorest today. The legacy of these policies is evident in Chicago's schools, where Black and Latino students often attend underfunded schools with limited resources. The wealth gap is equally alarming, with predominantly Black communities seeing less economic mobility and fewer job opportunities than their white counterparts. Crime statistics also paint a troubling picture, with Chicago's most violent neighborhoods often being those with the highest levels of segregation and poverty. Beyond statistics, this deeply ingrained inequality affects the daily lives of many Chicagoans, perpetuating cycles of disadvantage and creating a stark contrast between the city's rich and poor. Chicago's history of discrimination is far from over. Mississippi has a painful and complex history, deeply rooted in slavery, segregation, and violence against Black Americans. It was a battleground for the civil rights movement, where heroic figures like Medgar Evers fought for equality and justice. Yet, despite these struggles, Mississippi still ranks among the worst states in terms of racial inequality. It continues to grapple with the legacy of Jim Crow laws that kept Black communities oppressed for decades. Today, Black Mississippians face significant disparities in income, education, and healthcare, with the state consistently near the bottom in these key areas. Racial inequality remains embedded in everyday life, from the workplace to the classroom, making it harder for many to achieve upward mobility. This persistent inequality is exacerbated by a lack of resources, poor economic conditions, and inadequate support systems, leaving many Black families in poverty. The battle for racial justice is far from over in Mississippi, as systemic challenges continue to impede progress for Black residents across the state. Racism isn't just history, it's still shaping lives today. But the good news? Change is possible. Many people in these places are fighting back, pushing for equality and justice. What do you think? Have you experienced racism in any of these places? Let us know in the comments. If this video opened your eyes, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more content from Four Corner Facts. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.